Hello, I'm William Carver, Alliances and Core Services Director here at SCC, working in the digital workplace practice. And I'm delighted today to be hosting the SCC Simplifies podcast, where we're going to talk a little bit about device management and modern practices. And I'm joined by two of my colleagues this morning, Thomas and Paul. Would you guys like to introduce yourself? Maybe Thomas first.
Yeah, sure. I'm Thomas Perkins. I am the Senior Product Manager for Endpoint Lifecycle Services.
And hi there, it's Paul Wooldridge. So I am the pre-sales lead for digital workplace productivity. So it's my team that basically do all the solutionizing.
Cool. All right. Well, look, I think we should probably start with a really basic question. If you're thinking about traditionally how you've done device management, could you just talk a bit about what we see in organizations day to day?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's interesting traditional because it's been around a long time. It's
Sure.
served us very well. Traditional management is more about your group policy objects. So you're applying GPOs as you do, you domain join your devices. They get all the settings, the security things that they...
Paul, let me
they
just
do.
stop you there. What's a GPO when it's at home?
So group policy objects are basically the settings. So they're the settings that you put on those domain joined PCs. The GPO kind of applies and puts all the settings on there. So you're not going individually to each machine to put the settings on. They automatically kind of come down as well.
Okay.
So other parts of traditional management as well, kind of with what we would call SCCM or MECM, the configuration manager, is of course you're building your gold images.
Right.
You've got, devices that you're using. They could be Dell, HP, and all the different variants. You have to kind of make sure you've got driver packs. You've got to make sure that those core applications are on there. You're doing it with kind of task sequences and stuff. So there's a lot of effort that you have to put up just to deploy a laptop. That's really your kind of core of your traditional. And then you start to look at what Microsoft and other people refer to as modern management. So modern management is shifting a lot of those things. So you're no longer applying the GPOs, you're applying kind of configuration profiles, as they're called,
Okay.
in Intune. And so what that's saying, they're flowing directly from the cloud, which means all you need really is an internet connection.
Okay. So kind of if you're thinking about some of the limitations of a traditional approach to trying to do device management, what are some of the challenges that organizations face when they're doing that? Whoever wants to take it.
I've got to take it again. I'm just being, I was going to say on those ones. So some of the things on there, if you think about it, you think about your kind of supply chain. So you want to buy a laptop and you want to ultimately get it on someone's desk, get them productive, get them doing what they do best. You think about it, you've got to bring the machine in. If you're doing it with the kind of the traditional management, you've got to bring the machine, literally put it on the desk, so connect it to the domain so that it can get all of those settings from the GPO and the Active Directory. You put it through the task sequence, then IT hand over the device.
Okay.
So in the more kind of modern way of doing it, it's what's known as things like autopilot. What you can do with that one is actually when you buy the PC, directly from the manufacturers, they'll put what's known as the hardware hash straight into Intune.
Okay.
So again, no effort on your IT teams. And you could even get it to the place where you don't even need it to come back to IT to deploy. You can literally say to the people, get it out the box. It's already enrolled. Intune knows exactly what to do with it. I know what applications have got to go down there. All your configuration profiles, where's it all coming from? The cloud. All they need is an internet connection.
Yeah, I mean, traditional management is thinking about users being in an office connected to a domain joined PC. Modern management thinks about hybrid workers. It thinks about consultants. It thinks about everybody basically how we work today.
Mhm.
If you want to be productive in the way that we work today, modern management is the future.
So there's a practical piece in there in terms of just getting somebody up and running quickly, but also thinking about different modes of working as well within that environment.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I guess people are hearing a lot at the moment in the market, inevitably around new kinds of chipsets which are out there and NPUs, so neural processing units for those that might not know. Why should people actually care about that shift towards NPUs?
NPUs are a very exciting subject, and a lot of people may not have heard of them to this point.
Or maybe start with the basic, like, what is it?
Yeah.
I will pass over to
Okay.
technical about a neural processing unit.
Yeah, so if you think about a processor, let's go way back. It's just, everyone probably knows CPU, central processing unit. That's where everything ends up if the other parts of the chip can't handle it. all of a sudden gaming and everything introduced what we call the GPU, the graphics processing unit. So it was really the gaming industry that did that. But there's lots of practical applications. NPU is just the kind of continuation from that, the neural processing unit, as more AI workloads are coming in. NPUs are a way basically for some of those AI workloads, rather than going onto the CPU, which naturally draws more power, which uses more battery, which means if you're a laptop user, you're tethered to your desk, because actually it's not doing that. If you don't have that NPU capability, AI workloads will still run. They will still work, but not as efficiently as they could, which then ultimately impacts maybe the end user experience, especially with those kind of battery loads as well. So what you're finding is lots of chip manufacturers, your AMDs, Intel, Snapdragons, what they've got now is they're building in an NPU capability. It's just there.
Okay.
And a lot of people, like customers, are asking me going, well, we haven't rolled out any AI right now, so how can we get any benefit from it? Well, if you're using Microsoft Teams, for example, and you're using the blur feature, which is a very kind of popular feature, to kind of protect the privacy, Microsoft Teams will actually put that workload and that effort that's needed, taking it away from the CPU and put it on the NPU if it's available. So actually, more and more of your application vendors are looking at ways that they can use the NPU as opposed to the CPU, which results in better user experience and better battery powers as well.
And that's the part that really excites me. Not the technical bit, needs to happen. I understand that. But where it's really interesting for me is the productivity gains, what you can do with AI. And I think, everybody's sick of hearing about AI. But the reality is that it's here and we need to start thinking about it in the future, because any software that's developed over the next 5 years will assume that you have an NPU.
Right.
And if you don't have an NPU, you're at a natural disadvantage on running that software. So people need to start considering it as part of their device refresh.
I mean, I guess if you're thinking about most organizations right now looking at doing large scale refresh, they're going to be looking at NPUs as potentially an edge case. Should they worry about their traditional devices? Is that a difficult thing that they need to consider, or does it not particularly matter?
It's not that it particularly matters. It just means that you're not getting it as efficient as it could be. I'd be very surprised after probably at the end of this year that you'll be able to buy any processor that doesn't have an NPU capability. I think you'll find that it's going to become that kind of as default. The key really is finding out whether you actually need it to be what's known in the Microsoft world as a Copilot Plus or an AI-enabled PC.
Right.
Now that's different. So what does that actually mean to be AI-enabled? Does it mean if I don't have an AI-enabled PC, I can't run AI? No, you can always run. So even your traditional ones, they will run the AI, but what they'll put the workload onto the CPU, has an impact to the battery and the performance and things like that. But a lot of customers asking us at the moment, like, do I need to buy Copilot Plus PCs across the board? Not really.
No, I agree with you. I don't think you do. I think it's too big an output. And I know that, Will, you'll probably be upset with me saying that not that customers don't need to control
the top whenever you like. I have chat.
the entire device refresh estate. But the reality is that without a strategy moving forwards for device refresh involving NPUs, you're going to be floundering. And I think you need to consider what the strategy is and look at tiers of who needs it now and who needs it in the future. Because everyone will need it, but not everyone needs it today.
And I guess that's so. Tom, if you're thinking about that emergence and where you go and put the energy first into things like NPUs, what are the things that organizations should think about as the first kind of emergent environments for AI? Where should you put that effort?
I think anybody that is going to benefit from productivity gains. So a lot of knowledge workers, people who are meeting heavy, transcription is great, but it doesn't save you a lot of time. It's the AI-enabled output of transcription that really you get the benefit from. And that's where productivity can be improved. That's where frustrations can be limited.
And that's where I really like what we're doing at SCC around the kind of the persona work, employee experience, DEX tools, because what you're doing then is you're using more science than art.
Yeah, sure.
You're actually getting into those ones that you can discover that those particular people do need an AI-enabled PC. Because let's get what is an AI-enabled PC. It's got an NPU capability, but it's what's known as 40 TOPS, which is trillion operations per second.
Trillions of operations
Yeah,
per second. Right.
that's the brake horsepower that you're putting into the PC. Without doing that kind of persona work, and like Tom says there, of actually identifying the people that would benefit the most from there, your temptation then is to go, well, I'll give everyone an AI-enabled PC.
Sure.
Well, the cost will go up then. Are you really getting the value? Because that's what it's all about, is when you're looking at licensing or devices or anything like that, you've either got to increase the value or decrease the cost.
Sure.
That's what every single business is kind of looking at those. So yeah, it's, the old analogy of the, the Discovery Land Rover to go to and from the shops. Yeah, you can buy it and it'll sit on the drive and everything looks really nice, but you're not really getting the most out of it.
Okay. I mean, clearly NPUs and the advent of AI PCs are not the only things which are going on in the market from a device point of view, and therefore from a device management perspective. Thinking about things like cloud PCs, so Win365, that kind of stuff, where do you think those applications are most appropriate in an organization?
So Windows 365, another one of my passions. I not from a technical point of view. Again, I'm going to pass all those questions over to Paul. But from a use point of view, I think they are invaluable. I think no physical device is ever going to be the most secure device that you've ever used in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where things like hybrid workers and consultants come back into the frame. If you've got a consultant, you can just give them a cloud PC, and they can run that very securely for as long as you want, and then you can spin it back down.
Really, I was going to say on those ones, the more kind of technical side, you look at some of the announcements that Microsoft made at Ignite last year. A lot of investment has gone into Win365, so that kind of cloud PC. You start thinking about like Win365 Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an announcement that's passed a lot of by. And when I'm talking to a lot of customers about that, still fairly new, still working out those. Think of it like this spare tire, again, going back to the car analogy on those ones. If a laptop or a desktop goes down, how can I quickly get someone back up your supply chain? So the traditional method is, I'll have a laptop in a cupboard or something like that. Well, as soon as that laptop or that desktop's put in a cupboard, number one, again, you've got a cost. And secondly, that device will probably need to be rebuilt and reimaged. So it's not removing that. That's still a valid way of doing it. But the idea of the Win365 Reserve is that you could spin up a cloud PC really quite quickly and then get that person onto that device. And it might be using their own personal device. It might be using a thin client like a Win365 Link, because they're really designed to sit in cupboards because they don't have any kind of software. As soon as they connect to the internet, they're just going to update. The only thing that they're doing is connecting to. And so the Win365 Reserve gives you 10 days worth of this working, but it's a spare tire. You don't leave a spare tire on a car. You're still replacing the laptop because, again, the Win365 Reserve won't support things like hybrid domain join or those traditional methods that we talked about earlier on and group policies and things. So you've got to be on modern management in order to...
Yes, I was going to say, I mean, there's clearly a device management implication in that, right? If you're operating in a mixed environment like that and you're using Win365 as a management platform, are there any sort of gotchas in there or things that people may not have thought about that they should consider when they're looking at Win365?
One of the other reasons that Windows 365 is becoming why Microsoft are putting so much effort into Windows 365 is because nobody nowadays is growing up with Windows as a device.
Right, sure.
My kids don't know what a mouse is. I mean, they would think I was talking about the animal. They use tablets, they use touchscreens.
Yeah.
And Microsoft are acutely aware of this fact. So one of the reasons they want to invest in Windows 365 is because you can put it onto a tablet, you can make it an app, you can run it on an iPad, you can run it on any device. And that should be something that people should be aware of, that young professionals coming into the industry may not be as experienced with Windows as they would like. So they would much prefer to have a Mac or an iPad Pro or something like that, because that's what they're much more familiar with. And we all know that how you work is now as important as the work that you will output.
So okay, so we've talked about a couple of different things there, and you talked a little bit about modern device management as a whole, which goes across both of those. If you think about an organization that's looking at the very traditional, what they've always run, and they're trying to make that transition to a new modern device world, modern management world, I should say, what's a good first step? Where should they begin?
I think, again, I'm not going to speak technically. I don't know if that's becoming
speak
apparent.
technically if you
I
want
mean,
to.
I can try.
No, that's
okay?
fine.
What was it? Tops? No. So when you're looking at Config Manager, Microsoft Config Manager, you have to appreciate that Microsoft are not doing anything with it anymore. It's not end of life. It's not end of support, but it's in limbo.
Sure.
So it's almost dead in the water.
You're not going to get new features on it.
No, and if you want to manage the way that Microsoft manage, which is the gold standard of how you manage your devices, you need to be investing in modern management principles, and that's not necessarily doing a full jump, because I think where people fall down is they assume that modern management is just moving their Microsoft Config Manager GPOs over to
Just
modern
copy and
management.
paste.
Yeah, and I've likened it to that drawer in everyone's kitchen that has all of the stuff in that nobody really knows what's in there, but you just keep it in there just in case you might need it one day.
Yeah.
And you never have time to clean it out, so it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And then you move house, and it's like just taking that entire drawer with you and putting it back in the same spot and not looking at it. I think any organization that has more than 500 GPOs probably needs a redesign. And that's probably as technical as I
Yeah,
get.
I think you're right as well. There's lots of tools that can help you with that kind of thing. You can go with what's known as there's the tenant attach and the co-management. That's a good kind of first step. All of a sudden, you're getting all your devices at least visible in Intune. Because there's a lot of organizations, you've probably already made the investment into Intune with your Microsoft 365 licensing, and you might only be using that part of it. So again, increasing the value and, like I say, at the cost.
And just a point on that, Microsoft have now announced that Intune is included with Microsoft E3 and E5.
Well, it's always been. I think it's more the Intune suite.
Yeah, the Intune
features
suite
that are there. Cloud PKI is now is a key one that a lot of people getting certificates on their devices because that's the way they authenticate to their network.
You will have seen me slightly glowed if it was a PKI when it's at home.
Yeah, so public key infrastructure is all about putting a certificate on the device. So traditionally, you would do that on premises. You would have something kicking out, certificates to each one of the devices, so that when you're connecting to your network, it's like, well, who the hell is this device? Oh, you've got a certificate from an authority that I trust, that I know and love. You can connect, and you connect seamlessly. Whereas if you don't have that certificate, you're not getting in, basically. So one of the things is you have to deploy that infrastructure. So you have to, when you deploy that infrastructure, you need an Active Directory, and you need this and you need this. All of a sudden, the Cloud PKI means that once again, everything that's getting enrolled into Intune, that's managed by Intune, will get that certificate. And you will be able then to authenticate quite seamlessly, because a certificate is a type of tier kind of authentication. It's not good enough to the fact that you can just log on to the PC, but you also need the certificate. But you're not asking the user to present the certificate, just does it automatically.
And I think the theme across the board, acronyms aside, are user productivity and experience. It all comes down to user productivity and experience. And I think that's where a lot of businesses are moving towards. They're starting to appreciate that the more productive their users, the better quality they're doing. And it's not work harder, it's work smarter. And that is why modern management is so important for businesses today to move to.
So getting that, because I think that user experience piece is absolutely key, particularly in a world where cost is increasing on devices, and we'll talk about that in a different episode in terms of the difficulty of supply at the moment, but also just generally costs going up, particularly if you're going to go to an NPU type unit. You might be spending a bit more money on the device itself, so you need to get that productivity out of the user as quickly as you can, right?
Definitely.
And how does device management, just unpack a little bit for us, how does device management really help with that user experience? What's the sort of things that you're seeing as benefits to users?
I mean, as I mentioned before, the not just the transcription, but the actual meeting summary, and be able to identify the actions. So you can leave the meeting knowing exactly what you've got to do, and there's no change in what you've done from before. So you can go ahead and you can start working on those actions immediately. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but as soon as I leave a meeting, that has been erased from my entire memory.
Sure.
And I have no idea what we talked about unless I've written anything down. And when I'm writing stuff down, I'm missing the actual meeting. So that's, I mean, for me personally, the AI summaries are fantastic, and that's where the things like NPUs can really take the strain. So I can do everything that I need to do. I can have all the tabs open that I possibly want in the world, and the device still works as productively as I can.
Okay.
I think on the modern management side as well, why why customers are looking at kind of more modern management is that flexibility. IT teams are no longer going to be like, hey, we want to open up a new branch and spin it up really quickly to see if it can work, and then spin it back down again. With your kind of traditional on-premise, oh, well, I got to get the network connected. I got to make sure that it's expanded. I got to do a site-to-site VPN. I got to deploy a domain controller, blah, blah, blah. No, with the kind of the modern management, if you want to take a complete kind of left turn or a right turn, it doesn't matter if it's a mobile device, a Windows device, a Mac device, it's all managed through Intune. And again, what you're seeing with some of the announcements as well, you mentioned, Tom, about the licensing as well, security co-pilots coming into it.
I was going to say, security's got to be...
Yeah, so again, if you've got it all there, that's something that you're losing out of a little bit if you're not, or at least on that road to the modern management journey. So the security co-pilot is being able to interrogate Intune like in real terms. How many of these devices do not have this setting applied? How do I compare these devices? What's the authentication method that people are falling over on, or the conditional access? Asking it in real language and giving you those types of things, you get those insights back. That's not going to come to SCCM or MECM or group policy object. That's all there, sort of thing. So again, that kind of flexibility, which means you can then, again, related to the employee experience, do you want to match? Yeah, that's fine, because if I can get it into Intune, I can make it compliant, and it means that my security, my conditional access is all there. And from an IT point of view, you're managing it in one pane of glass.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, let's assume for a minute that we've piqued people's interest, right? They want to go down this route. They want to take advantage of the new devices. They want to operate in a new world. We've talked about some of the challenges in there. Very, very practically, first step, if they want to come and get engaged with SCC, where do they go? How do they get that first step started?
So we offer an endpoint advisory service as well, where we will deep dive into a customer's infrastructure and Intune and what they're doing. If they have Intune, they might have Config Manager, understanding what that GPO situation is like, and be able to actively produce a blueprint of how to get from where they are to what we would call a level 3 maturity organization, which is where all of our advisories will aim to get to, unless a customer has specifically requested that they want to be a level 4, level 5 maturity.
Sure.
So they can definitely reach out, get in touch, and we can run that advisory for them.
How long does it take roughly in terms of execution? Because people always worry about time, right?
So 5 to 10 days.
Okay. So you're not talking about a huge amount.
No, depending on the complexity of the organization, there might be a day here or there, but we run it for 10 days, and we provide a detailed document at the end of it, telling them exactly what they need to.
And that's why I think the advisory is so kind of important. It seems like, hey, I just want to get on with it, but then I think you fall into the trap of lift and shift your GPO.
Sure.
So again, lots of tools out there that will go, can I move this setting, in the traditional method into the modern one? The tools will go, yes, but it's not whether you can, it's whether you should.
Sure.
So there is another point as well. So we are also rolling out a maturity assessment service for a customer, which is free of charge, and it's just a survey that you do, and it pops out a response on where you are today versus how you want to get to it, but it's significantly less detailed than the advisory.
So that just gets you going, as it were.
It identifies where you are against your peers.
Okay, great. Well, look, I'm conscious of time, so thank you both very much. If people do want to reach out, just come onto scc.com. There's a contact form on there. Just fill it out, and we will get in touch with you. PDQ. Thank you very much for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.